opportunity to go beyond our books, lectures, and research, and to hear a personal account from someone who has lived through and survived a tragic period in world history. Her comments will provide a unique perspective from which we can reflect and learn. My name is Catherine Campbell. I'm the Dean of Instruction for Instructional Development at Delta College. Today's program is one of the activities in observation of Women's History Month. As you may know, Congress designated the month of March to commemorate American women of every race, class, and ethnic background who have made historic contributions to the growth and strength of our nation in numerous recorded and unrecorded ways. The congressional resolution also noted that American women in history have been consistently overlooked and undervalued. In the interest of giving credit where credit is due, I would like to recognize the Delta College speech faculty for their co-sponsorship of today's event, and especially recognize Vicki Marie, a member of the speech faculty, for her continuing commitment to the promotion of intercultural understanding, and for her role in bringing our speaker, Elane Norych to our campus today. Vicki is down here in front. Vicki, would you stand so we can give her some applause? In a continuing effort to give credit where it is due, it should be noted that the Associated Student Body, a co-sponsor, provided funding for today. Now it is my pleasure to introduce two students who will introduce our speaker. Please help me welcome Jocelyn Florent, the president of ASB, and Kristen Phillips Madsen, the student representative to the Delta College Board of Trustees.
Hey, you guys. Hello. Thank you. Okay, why are we here today? By a show of hands, how many of you are here because you're getting extra credit for a class? Yeah! I am too, don't worry about it. Okay. How many of you are here because your friends are walking, you have some time to hang out? Okay. And how many of you are here because there's some cute person next to you who's trying to get the phone number? Okay. No matter what your reasons are for being here, we are very happy to have you here.
I know that today, no matter what your reasons are, I can assure you that after you hear Ms. Geller, you will be disappointed. That might not be what you expected me to say, but I'm sure you will be disappointed. You'll be disappointed that we have to think again that 6 million Jews were killed during the Holocaust. You'll be disappointed that people around the world allowed it to happen. You'll be disappointed that you yourself aren't as involved and maybe as you want to be, and you may be disappointed that we still have social injustice going on in this world.
Elane Norych is a child survivor of the Holocaust and a social activist who will be speaking about the persecution of the Jews, the atrocities she personally experienced, and her ultimate survival during the death sentence imposed on 6 million Jews. To let you know, there's a reception in Shima Lounge today after the event. I hope that you guys all show up. She's really fantastic. And here's Ms. Elane Geller.
I can still say good morning, everybody, and tell you that I'm beginning to feel quite at home here, which for me is a wonderful feeling, and I hope I can come back in the future. My name, as you heard, is Elane Norych, and I am indeed a child Holocaust survivor who survived Nazi concentration camps from the age of 4 till well past 8, almost 5 years. I'm going to spend just a very few minutes placing myself in the atmosphere, the ambiance in which I hope to be heard. The reason for my doing this work, my hopes that it will enlighten and make you understand what I passionately feel, is our ability, yes, our ability to make this a better world. And in my view, we don't seem to have any choice but to work at it. 6 million, as you heard, of my brethren murdered. Out of that 6 million, 1.5 million were children under the age of 17. The numbers I'm giving you do not include soldiers. 5.5 million non-Jews, gypsies, gays, Jehovah's Witnesses, political dissidents, anyone that did not go along with the ideal. And the ideal was that Hitler wanted to build a master race. Only tall, blonde, and blue-eyed people would have a right to live. Everyone in this room, I feel very sure, has seen pictures of what this man looked like. Clearly not the prototype for his ideal. However, I feel that when you're filled with so much rage and hate and purpose, that when you look in the mirror, you see what you want to see, not what's really there. The 5.5 million non-Jewish souls, as mourned, as missed, as grieved over, as the Jewish souls. But we need to be historically accurate. Only the Jews were targeted for genocide. The others, he said he hoped to retool in some way, fix them somehow. Please don't ask me how, I don't have a clue. However, the plan was to murder 11 million Jews, to erase Jews from the face of Europe. 6 million tells you how successful he was. More than half of us murdered. And it was the plan to reward people that helped. No Nazi soldier ever had to explain to anybody why he killed a Jew. His motto was, Hitler's motto, to keep Europe Judenrein, clean of Jews, 0 Jews. If you killed a Jew, you helped towards the ultimate goal and were to be proud of that. By the way, it is well known at this point that no Nazi soldier had to actually kill anybody. They wouldn't be released from service if they said, no, I don't want to shoot, kill. And so far, we know of no such examples where someone said, I'll do this service, but I'm not going to kill. So these were willing executioners. And who were they? In broad daylight, this was a people who were perhaps the most cultured and civilized and erudite people of Europe. And so, from that, I need to point out to you that ethics and principles do not go along with brilliance in a certain subject or arena. That decent part of you needs to be worked on every minute of the day. You cannot take it for granted. Just because you're brilliant at something does not mean you're equally brilliant at your sense of right and wrong. You need to work at that. You need to understand, as I do, that it is a selfish journey. I am painfully aware how low I can become if the atmosphere around me is polluted. There are exceptions to everything that I'm about to share with you. Without question, there were some good Germans. Certainly, there were some good Poles, good anybody's. Good white Americans helped black America during slavery. Does that mean that we need not study the evils of slavery? Of course not. There are exceptions, as I said, but not enough to make a difference. I believe that racism, anti-Semitism, intolerance is as contagious, as catching as any other disease, AIDS and anything else. And for interest alone, this is a condition that we human beings can fix. And I don't frankly care how you arrive at the imperative of that. Whether you do it because you know it's not in vogue, I hope it comes out of vogue very quickly. The issue is free will. We were given free will. What we do with it is our challenge. Are those people who put on white sheets and funny hats going to meet in public places and be welcome and be considered mainstream? Or are they going to meet in dark rooms with drawn curtains and locked doors because they're not too popular? That is the challenge. My enemy is not going to define me. I have taken my anger and my pain and become an activist. Dummies and uneducated people do not make blueprints for ovens and crematoria. It takes an educated architect to do that. I was born in a small town in Poland called Wodzisław. The town had in it about 4,500 people. Close to 2,000 of them were Jews. We Jews had lived in Eastern Europe for hundreds of years. We paid taxes, we served in the army, we did everything required of good citizenry. Never were we considered first-class citizens. My family consisted of mother and father, 2 older brothers, an older sister, I was the youngest, aunts, uncles, cousins, everything I hope and pray is in your lives. And we knew, it wasn't the dark ages, that this madman was loose, that he was in truth conducting 2 wars. The war of conquest, he needed lots of land and oil and riches for what he hoped to be his master race, and the war against the Jews, both with equal fervor. Sometimes commentators like to say, well, the issue of the Jews was an afterthought. It was not an afterthought. It was part of the plan. We knew it would be worse for us because we were persecuted by the world before Hitler. Hitler did not invent anti-Semitism. To be precise, he may not have been an anti-Semite. He may have just been, quite simply, a Jew hater. He had lots of friends that were Semites. Lots of people helped him. You don't do this alone. So we knew from past history that war is not good for anybody. But it would be worse for us, and indeed it was. What some people did that could afford it, or thought of it, or could handle it, was provide some kind of area of safety, hopefully, for the persons or people in their family that were least able to survive on their own. The very elderly, perhaps the very young. In my family, mother and father, 2 older brothers, an older sister, aunts, cousins, uncles, everything I hope and pray is in your lives, and I was the youngest. And so what my father did was he hired a young seminarian, young man studying to be a priest, to tutor me at age 4, the kinds of things that a 4-year-old in that ambiance, in that setting, would need to know if she was going to pass as a Christian child. Remember the country, Poland, an extremely religious country. The church, powerful. Even under communism, they did not mess with the church, they knew better. In a larger center like Warsaw or Krakow, maybe I wouldn't have had to be prepared. But in a small Polish town, where everything centers around the church, your religious life, your political life, your social life, a child of 4, if she was going to pass as a Christian, needed to be prepared, and indeed I was. I was taught children's Bible stories from the New Testament that a child might learn and hear of in Sunday school, hymns much the same way, and of course, I needed documentation. I needed a false birth certificate, and I got one, and a false baptismal certificate, I got that too. An arrangement was made with the Christian family in our community that if the Nazis were to come into our town, I would be taken to this Christian home as arranged, left there till the war was over, and when the war was over, whoever survived in my family would come and get me. That was the plan. Some of these arrangements, many were carried out precisely as agreed upon, and many were not, as you will see. As we survivors are getting older and older, and there are fewer and fewer of us left, please believe me when I tell you, that some of us have already gone to the next world, not being absolutely certain that the child or children we left in the care of others weren't either turned over to the SS when we Jews were moved out of the town, or the family became very fond of the child, baptized it, converted it, and then hid it from the Jewish family member when they came to get it after the war. And so the day arrived, and the Nazis did march into our town. They started out by rounding up all the Jews on their knees. However, my earliest physical memory of the moment was my father putting on me an enormous amount of clothing. So many dresses, I could barely put my hands to my side. He also took off my earrings. It was not unusual for Nazi punks to grab a Jewish woman running, never breaking her stride as they pulled on her earlobe. A child was not a problem, not even a challenge. All they had to do was reach out. Once prepared, my father took my hand. We started to walk towards the Christian home where he was about to leave me. On the way, however, he noted that here and there a door would open up with what appeared to be the head of the household, with a small child at his side. Walked the child up to the SS and said, "I don't know who this is. It's not my child. It must be a Jewish child that wandered in here by mistake." The child was killed immediately, and the accompanying Jewish adult killed in front of everyone to show that they meant business. They were not to be messed with. The family of the child located and killed. Remember the motto, Juden rein, 0 Jews. The Christian family punished as well, but not the same way, I promise you. And when my father saw this betrayal, he decided to gamble and keep me with him. He and I turned around, started to walk towards the center of town where the rest of we Jews were gathered. By the time we got there, maybe 20 minutes, 25 minutes into this, 2 of my uncles were already dead. My father's youngest brother had a loaf of bread under his arm. In the bread, he stuffed some jewelry. A lot of people tried to hide on their person small items of value to be used later on as bargaining chips for a favor, for an extra crust of bread, for something. The bread fell, it split open. They saw the jewelry. They killed my uncle and another uncle, his brother-in-law with him. Now, by the way, there are people alive today, perhaps in this audience, it's okay, who think and say this did not happen. Well-organized groups called the revisionists. Across the social strata, teachers and professors and bus drivers and clerks and lawyers and doctors and moms and dads. Now, I'm not here to generalize on everyone, but I can tell you, on this point, they're idiots. Why? Because as you will hear as I continue, we were not encouraged, allowed to bring in papers and pencils and sharpeners so that we could record the atrocities and so that I could share them with you today. The vast majority of Holocaust facts and memorabilia comes from Nazi records and archives. They were meticulous in keeping records. Lots more to come out. And so, 2 uncles dead, about 20 minutes into this, or maybe an hour at the most overall. Around the large group of us were small bunches of us, pulled out of the community to help in our own demise and destruction. Some people that they deemed to be strong and burly dug large ditches for mass graves. Some people shaved hair, some people took gold out of inlay. And for that, maybe they got an extra crust of bread. The caloric intake of a Holocaust prisoner, 400 calories a day, 200 in the morning, 200 at night, consisting of a triangular piece of Schwarzbrot, black bread, and some dirty water that was to pass the soup. As a child, I never got any rations. You got rations if you worked. You were counted at night and at dawn. How many people died, how much food they needed, who tried to escape, who died in their sleep. My aunt always shared her little bit of food with me. One of the groups, however, was being shot at. People were bleeding and screaming and dying and falling down. And in that group were my grandparents and my mother. You think anybody in this world's going to tell me that what I saw and what I see in front of me didn't happen? In the case of my grandparents in a small town, they killed the sick right away. In order to take them elsewhere, they would need assistance. Why would they bother to do that if they were going to kill them anyway? My mother and others like her were recovering from various stages of illness. My mother was recovering, I was told, from extremely minor surgery. Again, they weren't going to put her on a gurney, take her to some infirmary, get her well, and then kill her. Why? They were very, very efficient. And so as soon as that massacre was over, we were quickly moved out of the center of town to a small holding camp not too far away. The camp was surrounded by electrified barbed wire. We were given armbands with yellow stars of David on them, and it was, in truth, the end of our freedom. Different family members were sent to different work camps, death camps. You really didn't know where they were going, if you'd ever see them again for that matter. My 16-year-old sister was sent to Auschwitz, where at 16, she died in the ovens of Auschwitz, simply because she was born a Jew. Now Auschwitz, a Holocaust survivor must always explain Auschwitz. Auschwitz popped up out of nowhere. Hitler was voted into office on his second attempt. He almost won the first time. However, the second time he did win, and it was a time in Nazi Germany when the economy was virtually non-existent. There were no jobs. Kids couldn't go to university. It was the ideal, the quintessential time for scapegoating. The Jews, the Jews, the Jews, get rid of the Jews, and things will be better. And sure enough, they did get better. In the big cities, Nazi businessmen, German businessmen went into posh government offices, bid on huge government contracts for enormous amounts of Cyclone B gas, barbed wire, striped cloth, God knows what else. And in the Auschwitz area, people suddenly had jobs. The people in the surrounding area could see, the smokestacks of Auschwitz, belching out smoke that smelled of human flesh burning. And suddenly they had jobs. They were making pillows out of human hair, jewelry out of gold inlay, fertilizer out of our bones, and nobody asked. Nobody. What's going on over there? Where are these jobs coming from? The great sin of looking the other way. Next, my aunt, my father's sister, one of the uncles killed was her husband. She and I were sent to another camp. A place called Stekachin, a coal mining town, a small coal mining town. And what my father did in the beginning, later on was no point, he tried to keep track of us. Anyone that came into the camp that he was in, that perhaps knew the family, that was easier, or if they didn't, he would describe us in great detail. Did you see my sister, my young daughter? If the answer was yes, with whatever of value he still had, he would bribe somebody and get us brought to where he was. By the way, my aunt was largely responsible for my survival. She would always say she was my mother. She never had any children of her own. The 1.5 million children, gotten in large part by saying, mothers and children, you're going to a Kinderheim, a children's home. They said it that way because they knew if they go up to a young mother and grab her infant, her toddler, they would be screaming and begging and pleading and hair pulling. They did not want their young soldiers to have to mess with that. So they said, these are not stupid women. We're going to tell them they're going to a children's home. They'll go quietly, leaving behind, as they did, teenagers, same age as most of you are, or some of you are. hoping you looked over, hoping you could pass as an adult, hoping you lived one more day, because every day that you live, perhaps the chances increased of living yet another day. But a child of 4 or 2 months old or 9 months old or 2 years old, how could we survive on our own? So allowing these women to go with their babies, these women went quietly and gratefully and in truth where they went to were the ovens and crematoria of the Third Reich. My aunt and I, she was snuck out in the middle of the night from this place called Stekachin. I was thrown over electrified barbed wire onto a large transport truck filled with coal. Both of us were buried under that coal, told not to cough, not to sneeze, not to make any noise, because as you can imagine, all vehicles, especially large trucks, are inspected during wartime with huge searchlights. And miraculously, really, we were able to be reunited with my father and 2 brothers briefly. Then all 5 of us sent to an enormous work camp in Poland called Skarżysk. The camp was so huge, it had so many sections, that I had no idea from that moment on if my father and brothers were there, dead or alive elsewhere. They ceased to be a fact of my life. No more in my life. My aunt, however, was put to work in a munitions factory, guns and bullets product. And for some bizarre reason unknown to this moment, there were a handful of other children in Skarżysk. We don't know, again, why we were left to run around there. We speculate they missed their own kids maybe, it made them feel more human. We were not a problem. They wanted to get rid of us, they were annoyed by us, all they had to do was kill us. They did not need to ask anyone's permission. And so instructions were given by our caregivers. My aunt daily said to me, when I'm not with you, stay out of the way. Don't be in anybody's face. Hide on the bunks in the barracks if you hear footsteps. I obeyed her. I wouldn't be here today. When I didn't, I got into trouble, and I'll explain in a moment. During this almost 5-year period, I had typhoid, typhus, tuberculosis, diseases of filth and poor hygiene. I had lice and rats in my hair. I stole. I ate toothpaste. I drank urine. I did whatever was necessary to fill my belly and stay alive. This is why these journeys for lecturing are so selfish. As I told you, I am already aware of what I can become when we pollute ethically and spiritually and morally. And so, many times, when a few of us children wandered out, of course I was never treated in an infirmary. They never would have let me go once I got there. We were told to hold hands, children holding hands and told to look up as they hugged rows and rows of people and laughed while we children cowered. One time when I wandered out, a couple of SS soldiers looked at me, looked at each other, said, "Look at this hair. It's too pretty for a Jewish child," and shaved me bald. When my aunt came back from work, started to cry because she could hardly recognize me, they beat her in front of me with a rubber hose. Another time when I wandered out for fun and diversion, they addressed an enormous pack of German shepherds, talked to the dogs as though the dogs were people and I was the dog. Mensch, beiß dem Hund. Persons, bite this dog. I was attacked and chewed on and bitten and mauled. And I begged and I pleaded and I cried. Eventually, for reasons unknown again, they called the dogs off. The physical scars are well healed. The emotional scars are not. To this second, if I am asked to go to anyone's home, I make absolutely certain that the pet you own and love and I hope treat well is behind a locked door. When I'm confronted with a loose animal, I have a flashback. I become once again that child of the Holocaust, begging and pleading and screaming for mercy. With it comes a sense of embarrassment, a sense of loss of dignity. Sometimes I'm fine in just a few minutes, and other times, believe me when I tell you, it takes much longer for me to be fine. We were then packed into railroad cars, boxcars. The conditions are beyond description. all of your bodily functions performed right where you were standing. What I remember most of all and will never ever forget were my aunt's screams as she begged the other inmates not to eat me alive. And that train was taking us to a place called Bergen-Belsen, where a young woman named Anne Frank died. Students usually want to know if I knew her. I may have met her, I don't remember. She was about 9 years older than I. She and her sister Margot died within 3 or 4 weeks after arriving in Bergen-Belsen. By the time they arrived, the war was beginning to be lost. Bergen-Belsen, a small camp, nevertheless one of the most disease-infected camps of the Third Reich. They were beginning to lose the war. They were packing these camps so they could kill more efficiently. And our train arrived in Bergen-Belsen, stopped a good distance outside the camps, and it was winter time. And our feet froze because we marched to the barracks on ground that was solid ice. My feet froze so badly when they began to thaw out, my aunt would stick her fist in my mouth so I wouldn't call attention to myself. As I said, they were killing for any reason at all. Didn't need any excuse. Arriving in these barracks were women from all parts of Europe: Hungary, France, Romania, Czechoslovakia, Bulgaria, from everywhere. And most of these women had already lost their families, without question, the children. This child didn't care. I went up to these different nationals. I asked them to teach me a song in their own language, like Frère Jacques, a London Bridge, or something like that. Then I'd go off into a corner and practice it. When I thought I knew the song well, I'd go back to the woman that taught me the song, and with my hand open, I would sing to her. She would give me whatever little bit of food she had, that she needed more than I did, I promise you that. It didn't bother me. I never looked back. She'd be crying. I'd take the food and leave. My aunt and I were liberated by the British in Bergen-Belsen. One of my brothers freed in a place called Buchenwald. The other of my brothers and father freed in another country, in Czechoslovakia. At that moment of liberation, none of us knew of each other's existence. That came later. We then needed to go into DP camps, displaced person camps, refugee camps. We needed medical attention, and above all, we needed to find a way to get off Nazi soil. And to that extent, the churches, the synagogues, the Red Cross, the newspapers, they all came into these camps. They took down the information that we were willing to give them, where we were looking for family and for work and for a way to get off the soil. An ad by a brother of mine read, "I am Jacob Norych, son of Israel Mordechai Norych, looking for family in the United States." My father actually had a brother in the United States, and I believe that my brother Jacob knew that. He was much older than I. An uncle of mine read the ad. Even though his name was no longer Norych, it was Warshawski. He took the surname of the immigrant that he came with on Ellis Island. Lots of immigrants did that. They didn't speak the language. It was easier for everyone to have the same last name. My uncle, of course, recognized the family and the town, raised heaven and earth to get us off Nazi soil, so that 5 of us arrived to the United States on the very first boatload of refugees to come to the U.S. out of the Holocaust. In May of '46, I entered kindergarten the following September. I'd never been to school. I didn't speak a word of English, and began my life here. Before I take your questions, please feel free to ask anything. I will answer one before you even worry about asking it. Yes, guys, I've had therapy. It's okay. I'm not frothing at the mouth, and as far as I know, very few of us Holocaust survivors have turned into serial killers. I want to say that the reverence for life amongst us is so extraordinary that we have turned into being very productive members of the societies we have joined. I do not understand, believe, ever understand how anybody can be a racist, a bigot, or an anti-Semite and be involved in any spiritual discipline. Believe in a higher power. What is going on in your brain when you think that you are the chosen one to live on this planet. What, all alone? What are you thinking? That the higher power you believe in looked down one day and said, oh my God, I made blacks and whites and Asians and Hispanics. I need help. I'm going to call on the racists and bigots of this world to help me clean up my act. I don't think so. The challenge is ours, yours and mine, yours more than mine. You, as I look out, to me, look like an exquisite garden of different colors and shapes, and I hope different disciplines and spiritualism. The challenge is, how do we appreciate and celebrate our differences? I have taken my anger and my pain. Guys, believe me, I don't like everybody. Not everybody likes me. I think that one is not too hard to figure out. But I would defend with my life the right of every single human being to be treated equally in the eyes of the law. As I stand here before you, I see and think of Bosnia, Rwanda, Armenia, slavery. These are the evils. They'll always be here. That's our challenge. We've gotten free will. What we do with it, that's the challenge. Will those people that hate and want us to hate each other and divide us meet in their white sheets or whatever else they choose to wear in open vistas, or are they going to be relegated to meeting in dark rooms with drawn curtains? That's your challenge. It is your challenge. You are the leaders of the world. I have taken my anger and frustration. You can feel whatever you want, you just can't act on everything. Democracy means giving up some rights for the greater good. Total freedom is anarchy, it is not democracy. And I know that you know that, and I feel safe when I look out at all of you. I thank you, and I ask you for your questions. Thank you. I will repeat the questions right up front here.
Yeah, before, my name is Pedro Garcia right here. Before, knowing that much about, history, I used to read the textbooks and all that about what happened to Jews right here. But, after you, speak your mind out, it was kind of emotional right there, how you had the power to survive after all that happened to you. And you also taught me, a lot more about history, about Jews right there, how, they went through all the torment and trouble. I wanted to ask the question, how did you, come up with all the courage and all that to survive each day after, after everything that has happened to you right there? How did you, get through life every day when you were in concentration camps?
Well, first of all, I really feel badly that you couldn't all hear what this gentleman said. And I want to thank you for your empathy, for your caring, and for your gift. When I hear someone talk to me, especially, as I told you, I presume, and I shouldn't, that you're not of my faith, I feel it is a gift of safety and welcome, and it is the hope that the world is different. The question basically was, and I thank you for that, how was I able to survive day to day in those camps? I think, I don't know for sure, that my being so young and thinking that the way I was living was normal helped. I'm sure it was much more difficult for my brothers. They had a life before the Holocaust. I did not. As far as my life today, what keeps me going is all of you, the hope that something like that could never happen with so much apathy, and the trust that you understand that. That keeps me going. Thank you for your wonderful remarks. Questions, please. If I'm not looking in the right direction, tell me, because it's hard to see up here. Yes, right here.
Have you ever returned to your homeland?
Poland? The question is, have I ever returned to Poland? I am not here to discourage your travel. I have not returned to Poland. Visit Poland, visit everywhere, broaden your horizons. I think if we all knew each other or some sampling of each other's cultures and riches, there would be no intolerance. I've not returned to Poland and don't plan to because I have no memories of Poland other than the Holocaust. But I certainly encourage all of you to visit. And right there. I did, the question is about branding that they did. I was not. They did brand children, and I deliberately, very little that I say is not deliberate, use the word branding. For a tattoo to me could mean a little flower on your ankle or, on your shoulder or something. They branded us as cattle. They branded children in the beginning, but when they realized they were going to kill them off right away, it was too time-consuming. And mercifully, I was spared that indignity. Anyone else? Right there.
How do you feel about the ethnic cleansing that occurs in other parts of the world and the U.S. policy? And if you disagree, what do you think?
Well, you lumped a lot of things there together. I'm going to say, how do I feel about ethnic cleansing? The mere utterances of the word is painful to me. So, I am appalled, angered, saddened at the fact that there are still places in this world where they can even say it. However, you also said the policy of the United States. I want to be very clear that you're not saying that we in the United States condone ethnic cleansing. Are you?
No.
Okay, I just want to be sure. Countries are imperfect. There are speakers that will come before you that will imbue you with anger and hatred. I'm not going to be one of those, because that to me is giving your power to your enemy. Somebody succeeds in convincing you that you are wasting your time by going to college, by wanting to make this a better world. You have turned over your strength to that enemy. I am motivated by the fact that I do not wish to give my enemy a posthumous victory. The world and life is precious, and we are in an imperfect world, but we can do something about it. Yes, ma'am?
Have you came face-to-face in contact with unbelievers?
The question is, have I ever been face-to-face with those people that do not believe that this happened? I've lectured at times where people have helped me to explain some things and given themselves away. I like all of these people to ask questions so they could be seen as the fools they are. Sometimes when they approach me, it's after the lecture, afterwards, and they'll say, I didn't want to ask this in public, and my answer is always, why not? No, I've not been faced directly. Yes? In Washington? I have been there. Let me talk about the two museums that I've been to. I've been to some others in Israel, but it's been a long time. The Holocaust Museum is a national museum that is exquisite, I think, in telling the story. You don't need guides. It's an extraordinary place. The museum that I am affiliated with is a place called, although I don't work for them, the Museum of Tolerance in Southern California, in LA. And that is what I call a teaching museum, a hands-on museum. It is an extraordinary place for seeing the story in context of history. You have to understand that if I'm not safe, you're not safe. How we teach you that lesson. And if you're not safe, I'm not safe. I believe passionately. You scratch the surface of a racist, there's an anti-Semite on there. If you scratch an anti-Semite, there'll be a racist under it. These places, these kinds of syndromes are not so complicated. They are ignorance and intolerance that we have to speak up against. Anyone else? Right here.
I was wondering, were the homosexuals and Jehovah's Witnesses or political prisoners held in camps separate from the Jewish people? Or?
All the other groups persecuted kept separate from the Jews. There was no lower group than the Jews. They were top priority. All of the death camps in Poland, that's not an accident. Nobody does what Hitler did alone. Right here, and then I'll come to that side, I promise.
You said that you were taught the Christian faith too.
Uh-huh.
And, you also had your faith. What one did you rely on when you were going to that? Like, what higher power did you call it?
Well, the question is, since I was taught some things about the Christianity and I'm a Jew, what do I rely on? Is that right? You have to correct me if I don't get you right. I was taught by rote. I was 4 years old. I had no wisdom beyond my years, I'm afraid to say. So I just repeated what I was told. My Judaism is my spiritual avenue. All of your spirituality has riches in it that you need to explore. I am profoundly tied to my tradition. I said I'd come this way, right there.
Following the Second World War, Simon Wiesenthal traced many of the escape routes and the escape methods used by Nazis. In your view, why did Jews not seek to exact vengeance or retribution or justice by bringing Nazis into a legal setting?
Well, first of all, the question was the gentleman stated that Simon Wiesenthal, nicknamed the Nazi hunter, has dedicated his life. Mr. Wiesenthal is now probably about 91, lives in Austria, wears a bulletproof vest because there have been attempts on his life, lives in Vienna by himself, and his wife and only child. 88 members of his family were killed. He was a trained architect who never practiced a day in his life, dedicated to bring the perpetrators to justice. We, and throughout the world, I don't know why you would think we have not sought the kind of revenge we seek is one that is justice. We are not going to repeat the style of the perpetrators. And the search for participants and perpetrator is ongoing till the last survivor dies, I promise you. Right here.
First of all, I'd like to thank you for speaking to us, and thank you for challenging us to confront hatred, and I hope that we all meet that challenge. I work a lot with children, and you spoke about the discrepancies in history, and it continues today.
Yes.
Stories about all races. And with working with children, is there something that you can tell us in terms of educators and something that we should be telling the children?
Educators are, to me, the most important people in this earth because we're all human. If you have one teacher, one professor, early on teacher, that makes some kind of impression on you, you have been given a gift. And it can be life-affirming and life-changing. In terms of children, empower the children. When I started to lecture, I used to take for granted, my passion goes. And one day, one child in a high school situation said, well, you said we should become active. What should we do? And I just assumed they knew, I said, write a letter, open your mouth. When you join a club, I think from the day you're born, you can be taught to be just and to be tolerant. That's different than disallowing a child to dislike somebody. I was part of a pilot program, 8th graders in Los Angeles, through the Museum of Tolerance. And a young black child stood up and asked precisely the question you asked. She said to me, very boldly, very bright little girl, she said, do you hate? I said, what do you mean? She said, well, do you hate? And she was very annoyed that I didn't get it right away, and I felt very frustrated. I said, well, yeah, there are some people that I hate, that I don't like. Why? And she started to cry. And she said to me, her parents and grandparents were brought up in the South. That her mother, obviously a good mother, who says, teaches her not to hate. And that when she sees her family looking at pictures like Mississippi burning or something like that, she sees tears in her elders' eyes and she hates those people. But she doesn't want to disappoint her mom. And I said, tell your mom to call me, but I hate the Nazi perpetrators. In my religion, in my tradition, we are not empowered to forgive on behalf of anyone else. If the Nazis that killed my sister meet her in the world to come and ask for her forgiveness and she grants it, I'm okay with that. But I do not have the power to forgive on behalf of anyone else. But also, we do not believe in communal guilt. I am corresponding with 2 young German students that I met when I was teaching, so that we judge people by how we experience them. We need to teach our children that we don't only have to care about the person we like, that human life is sacred, that if they see an injustice, they're to report it, not to endanger their life. We need to empower the children. When someone says all Jews are this, all blacks are this, all Asians are this, all Hispanics are this, you open your mouth and you say, I will judge people by how I experience them. That's the way, in my view, the only way, and right there is our leader of the future. Yes?
Do you meet with any of your family members after the Holocaust?
Did I meet, was I reunited with any of my family members? The first family member I was reunited with was my oldest brother, Jacob. He stole a British Army uniform. I used to put a fancy word to it, but he stole it. And got a crew cut. And we were told to stay put. As you can understand, it was an enormous task to document us and to try to reunite us with remaining family members, so that we had to stay where we were. I was in a refugee camp, I think I told you, called Landsberg. My brother, with a uniform, he could move around. He walked from camp to camp practically. Came into the camp I was in. I was sitting on a sunny day on the ground playing with my first doll that was in a Red Cross package, but I looked up, it was a sunny day, and saw a uniformed soldier running towards me, and I took off the other way. I didn't recognize him, and I was petrified of all uniforms. He told us to stay put, my aunt and I to stay put, and then he continued the journey, and eventually we were all 5 of us unified. Good question, thank you. Way in the back. And the other gentleman afterwards. I'm not going to forget you. I did not fully understand liberation. I do have a picture of me in liberation. That's a whole other story. Maybe during the reception you can look at it. I didn't know what was going on. As I told you, Bergen-Belsen was extremely disease infested. So they came, the British, on low planes. I saw more chaos. The first thing I did was steal a rutabaga and hide it. I was petrified of being hungry. Somebody's going to have to tell me how much time we have. We don't have any more time, but I do want to take this one gentleman's question. Please. I've never attended the war crimes and never come face to face with anyone. Thank you, that was merciful. Thank you all very, very much.